Now, while the United States is considering a direct deal with Hamas as Israel, despite the rising internal protests in Israel and the growing international pressure, there's no clarity yet on the Gaza ceasefire deal. Faced with the prospect of a potential failure of the talks, the United States is now scaling down its expectations, focusing instead on a different set of aims. Take a look.
Under pressure to commit to a truce in Gaza, Israel is stepping up its strikes on all fronts, conducting raids in Gaza localities, mounting attacks in the West Bank, raising the questions as to whether Israel, under Prime Minister Netanyahu, is at all interested in pursuing peace. Defense Minister Yoav Gallant is one of those who have been publicly urging the Israeli Prime Minister to be flexible in truce negotiations with Hamas. Their public spats over the issue have prompted Netanyahu to say he wants to sack Gallant. Now Washington is sending out a clear message telling Netanyahu not to do so, and that they are satisfied with the cooperation with Gallant. According to local Israeli media reports, the US message was polite but clear. Faced with Netanyahu's stonewalling attempts on peace, the US is giving vent to its frustration. It is telling Netanyahu that tensions need to be reduced amid a potential Iran attack that threatens a wider all-out regional conflict. In a blunt message, the US says its aircraft carrier cannot stay in the region to defend Israel forever. In the backdrop of the US hard talk, the Israeli forces have withdrawn from Jenin in the occupied West Bank after a 10-day-long siege. At least 21 people were killed in Jenin city and the refugee camp, the Palestinian Ministry of Health has said. Faced with the constant stonewalling of the truce efforts, the US is indicating it is making its own plans for the possible collapse of ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas. General C.Q. Brown, chairman of the US Joint Chiefs of Staff, says the US is focused on how not to broaden the conflict and also how to protect its forces. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
For more on this, we were earlier joined by Charles Kupchan, Senior Fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations. Here's what he had to say.
Well, listen, this is a pretty far-right Israeli government, the most far-right in Israeli history. And the United States sees Yoav Gallant as probably the most serious, influential voice of reason and voice of restraint. He has broken openly with Netanyahu on the question of whether Hamas can be completely defeated. He was critical of Netanyahu's effort to orchestrate legal changes. This goes back to before October 7 and the outbreak of war with Gaza. He has also encouraged Netanyahu to agree to remove Israeli forces from the border with between Gaza and Egypt, a key sticking point in the ceasefire negotiations. So he's on record disagreeing with the prime minister, and that's one of the reasons there's a lot of tension. But I think the United States is saying, don't get rid of your defense minister because he is an important player here, and he could prevent the Israelis from even going further in terms of opening a wider war in the region.
For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.